Today is Tuesday, April 4th, 2017. We're at the workplace of Eric Dennis on Church Hollow Road in Marlboro. Today's production crew is on video camera, Roxanne Burt, on audio recorder, Rosalie Smith, and on still camera, David Holzapfel. And I am the interviewer, Will Obama. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your background.
Sure.
Okay, have you always lived in Marlboro?
I have. In fact, I grew up at this very house.
Do you live in the same house as, oh yes, you did. Where specifically in town do you live now? Where is your physical home address?
Right now I'm living with Jean Boardman at the Whitestone Inn in the center of town. I've lived in various places over the years. I went to the college for 4 years. I went to the elementary school, obviously, and I went to the Putney School in Putney, but currently I live in the Whitestone Inn.
How far from your childhood home is your current home?
1.5 miles, 2 miles? Not far.
Aside from Marlboro, where else have you lived as an adult?
I lived in New Jersey for 6 months this past summer. I was apprenticing there as a blacksmith in a shop. At a place called the Peters Valley School of Craft. That was my most recent location.
Cool. May I ask how old you are right now?
I'm 26.
How many siblings do you have and what are their names?
I have 2 sisters. My younger sister is Marie and my older sister is Coral.
Where do they live now?
My younger sister is in college in Providence, Rhode Island, and my older sister is in a PhD program in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. So very far away.
What are your parents' names and what are their careers?
My dad's name is Dan Dennis, and he's a carpenter, and he works in the shop as well. That's what most of this wood is. And my mom's name is Sophie, and she's a professor at Landmark College in Putney.
Where do they live?
They live here in the roundhouse.
What's your partner's name?
My partner's name is Lisa Mitrofanova.
Where is she from?
That's a good question. If you ask her that, you get a lot of different answers. But she's originally from Russia. I met her at the college.
What career has she been involved with?
Has she been involved with? I don't know if she would say she's had a career. Right now, she has spent the past 1.5 years hopping around between artist residencies all over the country. She was at Peters Valley with me in New Jersey. She went to artist residency in Tennessee, and currently she's in Colorado for 3 months doing a residency there.
You attended the Marlboro School when you were a child. Who were your teachers then?
Who were my teachers? Well, David was my teacher, for one. Johnny Esau was my teacher. Tim was my junior high teacher. Ellen was my kindergarten teacher. I think she's still there, right, Ellen? That's what I remember, yeah.
What were some of the qualities of Marlboro School that you feel are unique or that you feel that have been helpful for your education in your life thus far?
In the elementary school. What are the qualities that I think are unique? That's a good question. I think having the 7th and 8th grade was very beneficial. I know that's a contentious issue these days. I really enjoyed staying there for 7th and 8th and interacting with the younger students. I think having the school be very small and the classes be very small was beneficial for creating close-knit friendships and long-lasting friendships, and having very close interaction with teachers, I think, were qualities that allow for close relationships and independence that I found useful going into high school.
What were some of the not so great qualities?
I remember it being hard when I was there. I don't know if they still do this. They split up after 4th grade. Some people went to 5th in David's room, and some went to 5th in John is written. I remember that being tough because it sort of split up friendship somewhat. From my point of view, that was kind of hard. I'm sure there's practical reasons why they did that, but yeah, I don't remember very well. I mostly have good memories of the elementary school, so it's a hard one.
How would you describe yourself as a child?
As a child, I was very active. I loved being in the woods. I was very shy. I liked to play games. I liked to play soccer. Just active and shy. I love that.
What high school did you attend?
Public school.
What did you do between high school and going to college?
I took a year off, and I worked for my dad as a carpenter for some of the year, and I saved up money to backpack around Scotland for a number of months in the spring of that year. That's mainly what I did. I worked and then backpacked. Yeah.
You attended Marlboro College. What were some of the reasons for deciding to go there?
Besides not getting into any other schools, I think ultimately I was very glad to go to Marlboro. One, because I really like the area. Obviously, I'm still around here. Also, the small size of it, I thought was conducive to creating very close-knit friendships and relationships with teachers. And also the freedom of what you could study there was very intriguing to me. So those were the reasons I went, and ultimately all those were pretty true. And I'm very happy to have gone there.
And what year did you graduate?
I don't even remember. 5 years ago? No, not that long ago. 3 years ago, maybe? I don't remember. 2 or 3 years ago. That would be 2014, around there. Yeah.
What was your Marlboro College plan? And what was the title? Will you briefly describe it?
My plan of concentration was it was a dual plan, so half of it was on ecology, and I studied with Jenny Ramstetter, and I studied the science of mycorrhizal fungi, and sort of how they relate to ecosystems. And then the other half of my plan was on metal sculpture. I studied with Tim Seeger, doing metal work, and I combined the two in my plan through an art show and a series of papers. Sort of a strange combination of things, but somehow it happened.
Who were your plan advisors in college?
Jenny Ramstetter and Tim Seeger.
Other than Marlboro College, where else or with whom have you studied?
In terms of blacksmithing, I'm mainly self-taught. I learned originally in high school. A man named Roger Blue taught me originally. And then I continued to work with Tim at Marlboro College. And then most recently I lived in New Jersey and apprenticed with a man named Jake Brown, who is a blacksmith at the craft school down there. So he is my most recent mentor when it comes to blacksmithing. Otherwise, I'm mainly self-taught.
When did you begin to realize that you wanted to be a professional blacksmith?
I think it's still in the works. I'm still figuring out what it means to be a blacksmith in this day and age. There's not many around anymore, and there's a lot of different ways it can take you. You can be a welder, you can work with non-ferrous metals, you can work with iron and do custom iron work. You could work in a production shop, or you could do knife making. There's a lot of different ways you can go. Was the question, when did I first realize? Or?
Yeah.
Well, I've always enjoyed it as a hobby, so I've sort of continued to self-teach myself as a hobby, and then when I realized I wanted to stay around here for the time being, I also knew that I wanted to work for myself in some capacity, so I figured I should try to combine the two, and I've just sort of built up a business from there.
Do you think it's better to learn how to make art in an academic or setting on your own?
I think both are very beneficial. I wouldn't give up either. I think I've done a lot of exploration on my own, as I said. I've self-taught a lot, but I've definitely come to points where I've had the realization that I need someone to show me how to do something, or I need critique from someone who has more experience than I do. So in that way, I would say both are very beneficial. It's important to have mentors and have people who are more experienced to show you how to do things and to critique your work. And it's also important to have your own time to explore and create yourself individually in your work.
Ironwork has a very long history. Are there particular historical periods of ironwork that you feel are important to you?
I wouldn't say any particular era. I sort of see it as a continuum, so it's all an evolution. There's sort of, I guess it's all connected for me, so I don't see any particular part of it that's important. Some people focus in colonial ironwork, and that's what they do, and I respect that definitely. And there's a lot to be learned for focusing on this particular style. But I think having the freedom to learn a particular style and then engage with other areas of ironwork or creating your own idea of what that means is important. So for me, I'm just trying to sort of, at this point, learn as much as I can. And I think that means going back to all different techniques. They're all related. They're all ultimately connected to how iron moves as a material and how you work with it. So for me, that's more important than focusing on a very specific type of iron.
Mm-hmm. Whose work do you admire but don't necessarily feel influenced by?
In college, I read a lot about the postmodern artists, like these people who did really big metal sculptures, very large, simple metal sculptures, I guess, big squares and hanging blocks and stuff like that. And I very much admire people who can do that giant scale of work. But at this point, I don't feel necessarily influenced by that. Maybe I am because I've learned a lot about it. Probably am. But I guess that would be my answer.
Who are your current ironworking heroes?
There's a man in North Carolina who's the blacksmith apprentice or blacksmith resident at the Penland Craft School. His name is Seth Gould. And I look at his work a lot online. He sort of has a blog where he keeps posting his work, and he does these amazingly intricate locks where you put a key in and turn it, and all these things move around and lock it and unlock it. Before he does it all by hand, there's all this intricate file work. He does a lot of non-ferrous work. He has all these brass fittings on these chests and locks. So he's someone I'm really excited about right now.
What is it about their work that you like?
I think the precision of his work is very outstanding to me, and his attention to detail and his ability to execute an idea very effectively. I think those are all qualities that I aspire to, so it's neat to see someone doing it really well.
When did you establish your studio here in Marlboro?
I've sort of been building it up over the past maybe 5 years, but about 2 years ago I became more serious and I built the structure up there and moved a lot of stuff in here and bought a lot of equipment for myself and made a lot of tools. So I'd say 2.5 years ago.
What were the factors that led you to set up for your forge here?
One was that it was a space where I didn't need to pay. That was very worthwhile. Also, my dad works here, so it was it's a neat opportunity to be able to work in the same place as him. So he'll be in here sometime. He's working on his own projects, and so it's neat to sort of bounce ideas off of him and collaborate. So that was also an incentive for setting up here.
Do you refer to yourself as an artist or a craftsperson, or a blacksmith or an iron worker?
All of the above.
Why do you prefer that term?
I think because they're all related. I think you can't. One of the reasons I really like ironwork is that it can be a very practical craft, in that there's a tradition behind it, and there's ways to do certain techniques, and you need to learn them and sort of build up your repertoire of techniques, and at the same time, there's a lot of artistic freedom that comes with the material. So I think using all of them is a fine way to do it.
What has led you to choose metal as your medium for creating objects?
Well, metal, I use wood too. I really enjoy using wood, and actually one of the reasons I like making metal objects is because a lot of woodworking tools are ultimately made from metal. So that was one of my incentives in getting into blacksmithing, was to make woodworking tools so that I could work with wood and make my own tools. Yeah, growing up, my dad always instilled a sense of importance on really quality hand tools. So being able to make those myself, I found to be really important. Otherwise, metal is really neat in that you can heat it up and you can bend it and move it however you want. And then when it cools down, it keeps that form. So you have a lot of freedom in what sort of shape you make it into. Whereas wood is sort of, you have to carve out a shape where you can glue pieces together. But I think the plasticity of steel and metal is really intriguing.
What metals do you work with?
Well, I can show you some of them. I brought a lot of them out. So these are various kinds of steel that I work with. They look all sort of similar, but they're different in that they have different amounts of carbon in them. And the importance of that is sort of the carbon gives the metal different qualities, like hardness and strength and ductility and stuff like that. So I work with various kinds of steels. This is a spring from a car. This is like a medium carbon steel that you can make a tool from. This is what's called wrought iron. So this is pretty much pure iron as it comes out of the ground. It has a grain like wood actually. So if you bend it, you would see this grain sort of separate. So I use that sometimes when you want a very soft and traditional material. And then there are materials like cast iron, which is this, where they pour it into a mold and they let it harden. And cast iron is very, very hard, very brittle. And you can see it actually, this gear broke because of the material it was made from. That's why it broke like that. And then I also use materials that have no iron in them at all, and they're called non-ferrous metals. And those are things like this piece of brass, or this piece of aluminum, or copper, or titanium. I use them for various fittings for tools and for decorations mostly. Yeah. Those are various materials I use.
Are there different kinds of iron you use, or are there different kinds for different types of work?
Yes. So as I was saying, the various iron they'll add, as an alloy, they'll add carbon into the material depending on what they want to use the metal for. They'll also add other elements like chromium or vanadium or silicon, and those will all give the steel different qualities. Right, so as I was saying, this file is a very high carbon steel, so it's very, very hard, which is why you can use it to cut other steel, softer steels. But this, if you hit it with a hammer, would probably just crack in half. Whereas this wrought iron would not, and that has to do with the amount of carbon in the steel. So it's really important to know what iron and steel you want, and the qualities it's going to give you before using it, and what the ultimate tool is going to be.
You have worked with other materials. Do you still work with them?
Yep, I use, probably wood is the most common material I use other than steel. I really like to combine the two. I often make hammers, or I made an adze this winter of drum knives, and those need wooden components as well as steel. So I really enjoy shaping the wood parts, if I can, with the tools that I've made before. I also sometimes use stone in sculpture, particularly. I like combining stone with steel. I think having the steel be this very ductile plastic material combined with the stone that's very permanent and hard to shape is interesting. So I like stone.
Have you ever taken a job aside from ironwork in order to help pay the bills?
I've done various odd jobs all over the years, nothing as full-time as I'm doing this, but I've worked as a granola baker, I've worked as a carpenter, I've worked as a sculpture studio assistant, I've done landscaping, all sorts of cool things.
Have you ever felt like finding another career?
Possibly. I think about that sometimes. I'm a certified rock climbing instructor, so sometimes I think about doing that as well. That's a possibility.
Why have you stayed in ironwork?
Well, I'm doing it now because I'm enjoying it. We'll see what happens later.
Would you give me a brief overview of what your career is this month?
I don't know if I'd call it a career, but I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I guess you could tell us, like, what you've been doing.
Sure. So, I guess on a daily basis, I work on commissions that people give me. So I make a lot of things like fireplace sets and some tools, and I recently made a garden trellis for someone. So I have commissions fairly regularly, and then I sell work through a website as well, so I pretty frequently have orders that I need to fill for that. So my days are usually split between those two things.
What are some characteristics that a professional person should have?
Characteristics. I think it really depends on what you aspire to, but I think having patience is probably a good thing. Working with any material takes a long time to learn what you need to work with the material, how to work it, how it's going to react to different processes and techniques, and that all comes, I think, with experience and practice. So I think first and foremost, patience would probably be a good one for any craftsman.
What are some characteristics that specifically a blacksmith must have?
Resistance to small burns would be a good one. We usually get little burns every now and then, but I think the patience thing still applies. I think being able to problem solve would be a good one, because in terms of traditional blacksmithing, it's important to be able to execute an idea that you have beforehand. There's a saying, strike while the iron is hot, and it's important to know what you're going to do when you pull your piece of steel out of the fire, so you're not trying to figure it out while your piece is cooling down. So yeah, I think patience and just being able to understand what needs to be done before you do it.
Mm-hmm. Are they different from, say, a jeweler's?
I don't think so. I think they're ultimately similar qualities. A jeweler, I guess, works on a very small scale usually, sometimes with lenses to help them see better, but ultimately they're similar. I think the attention to detail and the patience are qualities that are going to be important in both crafts. And I have friends who do both. I know a lot of people who are blacksmiths who also make jewelry, or blacksmith rings. It's sort of an upcoming thing where a lot of people are selling blacksmith rings now, forged Damascus rings and stainless steel rings and stuff like that. So I think both apply.
What inspires you to be a blacksmith?
What inspires me? One of them is tool making, definitely. I think having a history and a father as a woodworker, I definitely aspire to being able to make quality hand tools for woodworking. That's one of the things. I think also just the, meditativeness of blacksmithing inspires me. When I pull a piece out of the fire and I hammer on it, I'm not worrying about anything else, I guess. So that is also inspiring to me to sort of follow that and see where that takes me.
What motivates you to get to work each day?
I think just knowing that I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I'm excited to pound on hot metal and file and come up with project and problem solve. Yeah, all those things.
What are the types of work you do currently?
Well, today I've been working on this fireplace set, as you can see on the table. I got a commission yesterday for a fireplace shovel, so I'm going to start working on that. I have some sculptures in the process of my own, as well as some engraving tools and some hammers, all sorts of stuff.
Do you make drawings first or go straight to your material?
If it's something I've made a lot, I'll do drawings. I think that's very helpful in the planning process. With a pencil, you can erase and sort of imagine what's going to happen when you hammer on it. If it's not something that I've done, yeah, I'll usually draw a picture first. I think that's very helpful.
What is the relationship in your work between form and function?
I think they're very related. I think often, especially with a tool, there's sort of this phenomenon where if it looks like it's going to work, it often will work. And I think that sort of speaks to the tool making aspect and also the artistic aspect. I think following an aesthetic that looks good to you ultimately is going to create a form that is pleasing. So I think the two are quite related.
Do you make functional work or non-functional work or both?
Both, certainly. I think making both is important for me. Yeah, each sort of fills a niche in my motivation. So sometimes I'll really be excited about making tools, and then sometimes I'll be really excited about forgetting the functional aspect and making sculpture, which is totally non-functional. Or both. Yeah.
Do you prefer one type over the other?
No, I definitely just sort of wander back between the two, and oftentimes once you sort of get the functional aspect of, say, a tool down, you can decorate it or make it an artistic piece and sort of forget about the function temporarily. So in that way you can sort of balance both in one piece, which I think is exciting and a neat thing about blacksmithing.
How do you decide what you're going to make?
Well, sometimes people come to me with ideas and I'll work with them on the project and I'll make it to their specifications. Sometimes it's a tool that I just need to make to get other work done, so I'll make a tool. Sometimes it's an idea I've had or something I read in a book that I really want to try. Sometimes it's just to practice a certain technique that I want to practice. There are all sorts of ways that I come up with projects.
Can we move to the forge?
Yes, certainly. Yep. Equipment out there, or?
Are we gonna bring the equipment, Mom?
Yeah, we have to.
Oh yeah.
Steel. So you would start with a piece of metal like this, and every single one of these is a different step, and eventually you get to a leaf. So each one of these steps generally is going to be what we call one heat, which means I put it in the fire and it gets red hot, and I pull it out and I pound on it until it's cold, and that's one heat. So this particular process is going to take 7 or 8 heats to make. And I don't know if this is a good time or not, but I can actually demo this if you want me to. I can actually make one.
Sure. Pretty cool.
So I'll have you guys stand back there just because. So the steel is in the fire. This is mild steel, so it's very low carbon steel, so it won't get hard. I'm going to crank the air, and that's going to get the coal going. And I want to get it until it's a yellow heat, which means it's around 2,000 degrees, 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's quite hot, but it doesn't get so hot that I can't touch it back here. So, and if it did, I can cool it off with water. And this is the hammer I use to forge with. I also made that. So once it gets going, it doesn't take long to heat up. So again, you're sort of knocking the coal around constantly, so you need to maintain that pile for it to sort of keep it working efficiently. Nowadays you can get blowers that are electric, so you don't have to crank. I actually kind of like the hand crank one because it allows you to sort of finesse the fire exactly how you want it. The electric one, you just sort of close the air knot. So that's around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to do each of those steps. First one is just making a point. There's my point, just a square taper. And now I'm going to sort of sequester off a little piece of material on the end by hitting it on the edge. I'm going back and forth. In theory, the anvil should do half the work for you. So you hit down with the hammer and you press into the metal, and then the rebound from the anvil should mimic that on the back. So if you're lucky, you get like an equal change on each side. So you can see it's cooling down. I don't want to hit it much cooler than that, or it might crack off. It's sort of brittle now. So now I have this little chunk on the end there. I'm going to pull some of that material back to create the stem, I believe.
While you're doing that, has your work changed over the time of you've been professional?
I think I've gotten better at it with practice. I don't know if my work has changed, I guess. I think the things I've become interested in have changed a little bit in terms of tools, but I think I've just sort of gotten better in general, and obviously still have a lot to learn, but that's probably the biggest thing. So I'm just going to pull some of that material back. This little stem, it's still square though, and I want it to be round, so I'm just going to put on diamonds like that and knock those corners down. So now we're, I guess, there at that step. Now I'm going to flatten it out and then pull it out sideways.
How would you describe your business?
How would I describe it? It's lonely sometimes. I work all alone most days. Sometimes my dad is in and out. But really fun otherwise. Sometimes challenging.
Learning how to be a blacksmith is one part of your work. Running the business is part of another. How have you learned to run your business and emotional parts of your job?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time doing that. So a big part of it is working with people and getting my name out there a little bit, and dealing with finances. So that's like a whole other aspect I usually work on when I'm not actually here. I have to file taxes and stuff, so I have to figure that stuff out. So yeah, there is like this whole other side that you don't really see to running the business, sort of the interpersonal aspect and finances, and I have to go and buy materials and figure out what materials I need and where to get it, stuff like that. And so it is, yeah, a really big part of it as well. Okay, I'm going to push this thing down. Flat. Now I'm going to use this side of my hammer to draw it out this way. if I use this side of the hammer, it's going to spread the material out in every direction. If I flip my hammer over, suddenly I can determine which way I want the material to move. So by doing it this way, I'm spreading the material out, and that's how I get it to mush out like that. So that's the basics. So we can do that. And then if you want, you can add texture and whatnot. That's the idea.
Thank you for those.
Yeah.
About how much of your time is spent on the business part of your job and how much is on the actual making?
I'd say maybe 2/3 is spent on the making and 1/3 is spent on the business aspect, so quite a bit. I'll run down to Brattleboro or Livingston once or twice a week for materials. I'll deal with customers over the internet a lot, and I have to determine what they want. I'll deal with customers in Marlboro and sometimes going to people's houses, dealing with finances. Maybe like 2/3, 1/3.
Where do you usually sell it?
Well, either the people in Marlboro who commission me, or through a website online. Those are the two places I sell it.
What has been the best one for you so far?
What has been what?
What has been the best way of selling?
Oh, to sell it. The most successful so far has actually been through a website online. That's been very successful, but I would like to transition more towards selling things locally.
Where would you like to sell your work as your career advances?
In the ideal situation, I would say selling all of my work out of my shop would be awesome. It's neat to sell things to people all over the country, but I really like the aspect of knowing the person who I'm selling to. So eventually, in an ideal world, selling it all directly out of my shop would be great.
Who are your typical buyers of your work? Who are your clients?
Locals, people who know me and need things, and people, I don't know who the people are online, but they order things and I make it for them, so wherever they are, yeah.
Would you please describe a typical day of work from when you get up until you finish your work in the studio?
Well, I come here in the morning, and if it's winter, which it often is, I got the fire going because it's freezing in here and no one wants to be touching iron when it's 0 degrees.
Yeah.
So I usually light a fire and I wait a while until it's warm. And I'll figure out what I'm going to make for the day, and I'll make a list, and then I'll get to it and I'll start counting it out. And I'll have a lunch break, and then I'll usually clean up the pieces in the afternoon. I use a electric wire wheel brush that I clean the pieces with. Sometimes I'll put oil or wax on them. And then often at the end of the day I pack stuff up and ship it out if it's going somewhere, or go home and make food.
What do you feel are more important parts of your work?
More important parts of my work. I don't know if there is a particular part that's more important. If it's a piece that someone ordered from me, then I guess getting the piece accurate and functional is important to me. If it's something that I'm making for myself, making sure it's sort of up to my standards, I guess, or true to my creativity, I guess that would be the important aspect of that. But it changes, I guess, depending on what I'm making and for who.
What are some of the parts of the job you especially like?
I think the actual forging, definitely. The business aspect is fine, and that's important, but actually getting into the fire and using the hammer, I think, is the best part by far.
Are there parts of the job you dislike, but you have to do anyway?
Using that grinder over there is one of them. It's like dirty and messy and throws off a lot of dust, and I don't like using that thing, but it's super efficient and works really well, so I use it. So that's one of them.
What do you see as the future of your work in your studio in Marlboro?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I'm not sure if I will stay in Marlboro or move somewhere else and set up a shop somewhere else. at this point, it's fairly unclear what the future will look like. So I don't know if I can answer that question.
What are some of the more challenging aspects of having a blacksmithing business today?
Okay, well, I think one of the hard parts about it is that there aren't many blacksmiths around, so networking with other blacksmiths is fun. In order to learn techniques, you need to go either to schools or seek out the few people who are actually doing metalworking. So that's sort of a challenging aspect. Sort of marketing yourself and not overcharging this hard, because it's a fairly specialized thing, so I need to charge a certain amount, and not everyone wants to buy like a very fancy fireplace set, so finding the people who do want to buy that can be a challenge, I guess.
What are some of the interests, one of some of your interests outside of your work as a blacksmith?
My biggest interest outside of my work is probably rock climbing. Pretty much any free time I have, I'm not blacksmithing, I try to rock climb. That's a big one. Running, so I do that a lot. I like to be active, I guess. I'm not blacksmithing. I sort of just stand around a lot and hammer blacksmithing, but I'm not active. So I like to get out and go running or rock climbing or something, but I'm not doing that.
What people or experiences would you say have influenced you in your personal life, and what are the ways they have influenced you?
In my personal life, man, so many people. Yeah, a lot of people in Marlboro. I know a lot of them in Marlboro at this point, and a lot of teachers and a lot of friends have influenced me. My close friends in Marlboro definitely are huge inspirations to me, and I keep in touch with them and like to know what they're doing. The blacksmiths that I met in New Jersey are very inspirational to me as well, and I see them sort of as mentors. So.
Is there anything else about your life or work in Marlboro that you'd like to mention but I have not asked you about?
No, you've been very thorough. I think you've covered it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.